We know that for years and decades exactly, Christian extremists have dreamed of taxpayer-funded religious schools throughout this nation of ours. And in the past, and this month, they are actually a step closer to making that nightmare a reality. And it's a dangerous development because it could mark the first time that a state has directly funded religious education since the landmark Supreme Court decision in Everson versus Board of Education on the Township of Ewing in 1947, which confirmed it is unconstitutional to do so. And it's basically a repeat of Dobbs once again because Christian nationalists are purposefully challenging Supreme Court precedent in order to push conservative justices to overturn decades of precedent protecting our rights. And this is important because if it is overturned or even severely restricts Everson, the consequences are going to be catastrophic. And it would be even more catastrophic given last year's Carson versus Mackin decision, which ruled that states have to include religious institutions in taxpayer-funded voucher programs, even if they fail to offer an equivalent secular education. And whether you live in California, Oklahoma, Texas, or New York, or in any state in this country, or in any country, the public education system is at risk. Because specifically, the cash-strapped public schools would inevitably lose funding to religious charter schools, worsening conditions for students in secular schools. And that is intentional. This is, however, the latest step in the Christian nationalist project to dismantle our public education system and replace it with private religious education that's going to push conservative Christian nationalist values. We cannot have that. The gravity of the situation is setting in. We have to take action, though. We have to stop this. And Americans need to be reminded why the public education system matters and why public secular education is such a remarkable societal achievement, and why public schools should not be undermined in favor of unaccountable religious schools. We need to emphasize the importance of court reform as well, including at the U.S. Supreme Court. And that's because of recent Supreme Court decisions, religious schools are now exempt from basic oversight and civil rights protections, which, in reality, they should not be. Their teachers don't have to be certified, and their schools can discriminate against teachers for any reason, and against students for any reason as well, even if it's not based on their religion. Rather than focusing on academics, these schools purposefully aim to indoctrinate children through mandatory religious participation, misinformation, and coercion. Too often, though, it results in stigma against youths with disfavored identities and a so-called education that leaves students unprepared for the real world, especially once they get to college. And as an American, you don't want your tax dollars to flow to religious schools. You want them flowing away from them. And even most Oklahomans, by the way, the state that is trying to approve this is Oklahoma. And the Oklahomans who live in one of the most conservative states in the country don't want this either. Even the state's current Attorney General, a Republican, has spoken out against the school board's vote to accept a Catholic charter school. Theocracy is not popular, not in Oklahoma or anywhere else in our nation. And yet, if we don't do anything, it will become reality in this country. And we need to stop it from happening. This is not the end. It's only the beginning of the fight. We have to keep fighting. We need to do any and everything it takes. And on another note, we're also facing a maternal health crisis in some of the most vulnerable parts of the nation. Understaffed labor and delivery units are shutting down all across the country, particularly in states with abortion restrictions. Doctors are leaving or considering leaving these states because they can't legally provide their patients with the care they need anymore. And medical students are increasingly unwilling to apply to residency programs in anti-choice states. And what's the result of this? More than 2.2 American women, exactly 2.2 million American women and counting are living in maternity care deserts or areas with no obstetric care. Republican politicians are making it harder and more dangerous for people in this country to start families, all while claiming their anti-choice policies are meant to protect the constituents. But it's not really meant to protect. It's real. The Republican political leaders and Republican politicians are actually intentionally getting in the way. And it's just one of the many devastating impacts on abortion restriction in the wake of last year's Dobbs decision. As a result, more Democratic pro-choice women and pro-choice men have to be elected, and it has to start at the state and local level. And they will fight for a right to decide when and if a woman has a child. And that needs to be done. Really, it does.